Now, Sports Talk with Brodes. Here's Hunter Brody.
Hey guys, make sure you head on over to my Twitter page for the new weekly giveaway. Every Wednesday, there's a Hump Day giveaway. Right now, we're giving away a beautiful quarter zip 76ers long sleeve. It is magnificent. All you need to do is check out the pinned tweet at the top of my profile, retweet it, follow me, and follow at Brodes Media, my Brodes Media account. So that's it. Make sure you are engaged and ready to win, and stay tuned for all the other Hump Day giveaways that are available every Wednesday. Enjoy the show. What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Brodes. The Sixers lose again. They fall in Milwaukee, and this was so brutal that a handful of minutes into the game, Doc Rivers had to call a timeout because the Bucks went on a 10-0 run. We all know what the schedule was like, and we were frustrated when we saw it. A back-to-back this late in the season, the Phoenix Suns, and then you're playing a Milwaukee Bucks team. You're at home against Phoenix. You're going to Milwaukee. It didn't really make much sense while the Bucks had a couple days of rest, so it makes sense that one team is fresher than the other. But normally, that shows as the game continues. As the game progresses, you realize back end of the second quarter, the start of the third quarter, maybe at the end of the third quarter, entering the fourth, you see that there's fatigue involved. The Sixers look out of breath, while one team has extra juice in their legs. That's when it normally shows up in that second half of a back-to-back, in the second half. To start out the game that way, that's normally when there's at least some adrenaline and you're excited to play the game. To fall asleep that early, yeah, I wasn't happy with that. I'm okay, or no, it's not that I'm okay, but I'm understanding of the current situation if you were to lose. I didn't love how it played out, though. Realistically, you were put in a position to lose, so it just comes down to how it went down. The defensive miscues. What are you doing? You're falling asleep, allowing guys to get wide open. Now, Doc Rivers, after the game, said something that somewhat pissed me off a little bit where it comes to Joel Embiid guarding Giannis. And because it was the second half of a back-to-back, they didn't want to utilize him on Giannis. And if this was a playoff game, obviously Ben Simmons or Joel would have been something that they went to there. And I just think, what are you waiting for here? What are you trying to hold back? You still logged in a ton of minutes. You still had him playing a lot. And realistically, your method of utilizing Joel Embiid was flawed because Brook Lopez was getting wide open shots, whether it was him camping out in three or it was him with the pick and roll game with the wide open three. I hate it. It was a disaster how they used Embiid, and you set the team up to fail with the way that you apply to your defensive matchups. What's the point? You're going to have him out there and put this team in a position to not play its best basketball when you're, quote, fighting for that one spot, and you're trying to grab that one spot because you value it so much. How you coach this game told me maybe you don't value it as much as I thought you did, because it's so damn simple to see that you can't put Tobias Harris on Giannis to start the game the way that you did. That was a disaster matchup. What did you expect to happen? I've been recognizing that you have some versatility involved with Tobias that you would have never thought of before the season started. That's not Giannis, though. There's no way that Giannis was in play when you thought about Tobias Harris and how he's going to be able to defend. Look at the physicality involved. So I didn't love the approach at all. Here's one thing that is somewhat annoying me, though, with Sixers Twitter and Ben Simmons stands. All over the place tonight after the game. See? I don't want to even hear one thing bad about Ben. Not one. That's so ridiculous to me. First off, if there's any jerk-off out there that thinks that this team is worse with Ben Simmons than with Ben Simmons, not talking about a trade, just here's Ben, you have him, or here's the Sixers and you don't have him. I don't think anyone in this universe that knows something about basketball is going to claim that this team is better with him off the floor without any sort of payout involved, without any sort of switch involved. Now, if you were to get a player like Harden, like Beal, well, that's a totally different story. But this whole, well, you can't slander Ben now. Sure I can. Sure I can. He helps this team compared to if you don't have him at all, but to just not focus on such a big issue of your game for the last 4 years. You can't pretend like that doesn't matter. I cannot believe it. You're talking about a guy who's second in running and defensive player of the year. Yeah, there's going to be differences that you can do matchup-wise when he's available. You can have Ben on Giannis, and then you can work with Joel Embiid in another area and use him differently. I thought they tried to somewhat keep his minutes low, restrict him with energy. If Ben is on Giannis, and that totally changes how you can work with Joel. But the stretch five, that position, that's going to be an issue for this team. And guess what? In 2021, if you are going to have all sorts of miscues based off of the stretch five, you're going to have a terrible run. This isn't the first time. I mentioned it a couple games ago. There was something about the way the Sixers were playing against a team that spaces you out insanely. And when that happens, good luck. This team has an issue, and teams are getting wide open looks because of that. I almost wonder with Dwight Howard, it might not be automatic. It might not be something that, well, because Joel Embiid's not on the floor for maybe 8 or 10 minutes or so of a basketball game, it's not automatically a player like Dwight Howard. Maybe you have to go Ben, and that might not be something that works 100%, but it might be better than Dwight Howard. You are extremely limited, and when you have Bobby Portis in the third, look, Tobias Harris, who struggled early, and I think it's unacceptable that he came out that flat and he played that poor. In the third quarter, he was someone that you could rely on, and the offense looked better, and he was making some nice buckets, and he chopped into the lead to the point where it was a 9-point game. They actually diminished it to a single-digit lead, or deficit for the Sixers' perspective. It was a 9-point lead for the Bucks. You just, out of nowhere, one TV timeout later, and Bobby Portis is drilling threes in your face. If teams are going to spread you out, and guess what? It's similar to what happened with the Boston Celtics and Ben Simmons. Once a team puts it on tape, every team is going to rock with it. And now that things are getting more important and crunch time is underway and teams are starting to heavily dissect their opponents and think about where you might see certain teams and where things might fall in the second round, things are getting heavier. No doubt about it. Things are getting looked at with more of an intent. I think you're going to see teams really try to apply this stretch the floor concept, and it might be really, really hard for this Sixer squad because they have been a mess with it. I'm still a little, I don't know if it's stunned, definitely not stunned or shocked, but I don't know if I believe the illness of Ben Simmons. When Doc Rivers, and this went over my head yesterday, I did bring it up, though. Doc Rivers mentioned, would you want to sit with him on the plane? Would you want to sit with him or sit next to him on a bus ride or anything like that? Would you want to be near him? He was on the bench last game. He was on the bench. So, he might not make the trip with the team, but he's hanging out with the bench, but nobody wants to be near him. Would you want to be near him? Something's not adding up here, and the fact that after tonight's game, Doc mentions that he's 50-50 at best to return for Saturday. There's just something not adding up with me when it comes to Ben. But Saturday's game is huge. You're now looking at the standings, and you're technically still in first place, but the Nets are right there. You have the tiebreaker involved, and Milwaukee continues to climb. I brought this up on my show on The Fanatic on Sunday. Are we just disrespecting the Milwaukee Bucks? Everyone talks about the Sixers. Everyone's talking about the Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant, James Harden. But because the Milwaukee Bucks have been somewhat involved for the last couple of years, Giannis and Chris Middleton, those two have been together for a bit. They did add a player like Drew Holiday, which matters. But because it's not new, it's not flashy, it's kind of older, you're somewhat fatigued of it already, that the Bucks just slide under the radar, they could ball. Now, I don't anticipate them scoring 70-plus points in all these first halves. They shot 68% from the field in the first half from all over the court and 61% from three. They knocked down every fucking shot it seemed. There was no way of stopping them. They got wide open looks, and they got good cuts to the basket, and the defensive mishaps, the overhelp, the help D, out of rhythm, out of sync. They could not get in control of each other. They would try and attack one way, and that would leave a hole open on a different section of the floor defensively, and Milwaukee just took advantage. Their help defense was bonkers, head-scratching, for sure. If I'm Doc Rivers, I'm disgusted with some of the things that I saw. And then, of course, if you ever turn the ball over, you can never expect this team to help out with transition D, because that's just not in their DNA. Here were your starters in the first half. George Hill, minus 17. Danny Green, minus 18, who had a 0-point performance. But I chalk that up to the schedule, veteran player, legs needing to get more under him. To me, Danny Green, he's been so lights out for so damn long, for such a good stretch. If you put up a 0 burger on a night where a lot of guys struggle and it just wasn't there for him. For me, the way I analyzed tonight's game, for Danny Green specifically, that's one of those nights. For Tobias, I have a different philosophy. I saw some struggles, and I need you to be better. You have to be a better version. Third quarter was fine, but there were a lot more plays out there that you left out. You have to be stronger. You need to make better decisions. I saw some rebounding issues as well. It was as if he wasn't clocked in upstairs. He wasn't mentally ready to compete from the tip-off. How are you not ready to compete against this team? That's one of my biggest pet peeves. I actually can understand not showing up against a team that stinks on a random weekday. I can't understand not showing up on the road to battle against a team like Milwaukee right from the start of the game. That's when you're not prepared. That's where you have to be your most prepared. As the game continues, you get tired. You played a game the night before. That's when I can understand it more. It's crazy. Embiid, minus 22. Seth Curry, minus 18. Embiid had so many weird moments defensively for me today, whether it was Brook Lopez, whether it was sometimes in the pick and roll. There was one, though, one that stands out for the extreme positive, and that's what he did to Drew Holiday out by the perimeter in the corner. Now, Drew was hitting him with some shake and bake, all right? Drew was definitely being a great ball handler in that situation. He's working around. He's being flashy. And I thought he had a few times where he was trying to get cuter and trying to make a prettier play where he probably could have exploded to the basket and gotten by him. Instead, he does his crafty handles, passes it to Giannis, which then gets passed back to Drew underneath the basket with Embiid still on him. He threw up some horrendous-looking layup at the end of the shot clock, and he missed the rim completely. It just shows you, though, you have a 7'2" center being able to stay in front of. As much as Drew did make it look shifty and whatnot, the fact that Embiid stayed with him and was able to, even though he reached a few times and it looked like he was on ice skates for maybe 0.02 of a second, reaching, you reach, I teach, his body frame and his footwork and his ability to slide with a guard that can clearly have acceleration and explosiveness on someone of Joel Embiid's frame, it's ridiculous. Unfortunately, we had to listen to the worst broadcast in the history of the world, and here's Chris Webber. Every time the MVP race was brought up for Embiid, it's, well, every time someone mentions Embiid, I have to mention that Jokic's ability to play every game. Yeah, we get it, dude, and I'm with you. I understand that there is something to Jokic and the way that he has been more available for his team, and I think that will actually give him the advantage at the end of the day. But you're watching a 76ers game. I'm not here to listen to you talk about the Denver Nuggets and Jokic every time Embiid is mentioned. And oh, by the way, Embiid is mentioned a lot of the time considering he's the superstar out there. So can we please just stop? There was maybe one stretch of Joel that I was satisfied with offensively. It was where he was making Brook Lopez look lost upstairs. He kept going after Lopez for just a spurt there, and it was beautiful. It's what you needed to do more often. Instead, didn't feel like attacking, settled for a lot of jumpers, settled for some plays that I'm sure the Milwaukee Bucks went, whew, all right, thank the Lord he didn't go back to the basket there. Whew, thank God he didn't get into the paint. You saw them somewhat dare the Sixers to take their shots, and they benefited from it because the Sixers absolutely did get sucked in. It was one really good stretch, though, of Brook Lopez one-on-one had no business. He couldn't even hold Joel Embiid's jock straps. The problem was it was for such a short stint and such a short amount of time that at the end of the day, when you look at that matchup, yeah, Brook Lopez was cruising and knocking his shots where most of the times you see Joel Embiid win that one-on-one matchup. It only happened for such a small amount of possessions that it's ridiculous. You see that. You know it's there. Please continue. Please realize, see what you're capable of. See that you can score more points. Instead, you let them off the hook. That's what makes it unsatisfying. You allowed Brook Lopez to get off the hook defensively, which then allowed him to somewhat be more confident with some of those thrilling threes from deep. You know it's bad, by the way, when someone like Shake Milton, who has been a disaster as of late, and someone like Mike Scott, they are your two most efficient players out there on the court. Shake Milton actually had a really good game. Unfortunately, they haven't come in bunches like we need them to, but in 26 minutes, he had 20 points, and he was drilling threes. When it was a comfortable lead for the Bucks, he was the only one eye-popping. He was the only one catching my eyes, where he was somewhat holding the team, I guess you could say, involved, even though it wasn't actually involved. He was the only one making plays out there. Mike Scott ended up drilling a few threes in a row and showing some confidence. When Mike Scott and Shake Milton are the only ones that catch your attention, I think it tells you everything you need to know about your team's offense. I thought George Hill at times defensively was getting beat pretty good on the matchups. I'm thinking matchup-wise. If you end up in the second seed and let's say Brooklyn ends up in the first seed, you're going to see the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round, and that is so much different and so much more intense than seeing the New York Knicks or something in the second round. So this first seed is starting to become way more important considering the lack of depth in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks are a competitive team. They're coached by Tom Thibodeau, so you know their work ethic is going to be there. But they're lacking an insane amount of talent, and there's no way that a team like that's going to beat a team that has way more talent. So it's just you playing the Knicks is such a bigger difference in that second round. That's what intensifies these games for sure. Matchup-wise, I'm watching George Hill lose his battle. I'm watching the spacing on the floor. Now, Ben's not there, and it's obvious that Ben would make a stronger impact defensively. It's such a different atmosphere and such a different matchup game. We talked about this earlier in the season when Ben played against Giannis. We've never seen someone make Giannis feel that uncomfortable. When you saw the look on his face, he was in disgust at himself, and he was so bothered and upset about it. Ben got into his grill, and Ben clearly played the mental game with him where Giannis had no answers, and I think that it really ate him alive that he had no answers. You don't see players one-on-one get to Giannis the way that Ben did. So, factoring that in, how does that change your matchups? Well, it changes it significantly, and you would see a totally different Sixers team, and that's why, for the most part, all year long, it's, yeah, you can learn things about your team, but you can't really get your full assessment on a team because when you play them in the playoffs, it changes every dynamic of it. There is still something to, though, the spacing. I think the spacing with the big man, when you see this team have to be spread out, they get lost, and that has to change, or it will be the downfall. Turnovers leading to transitions and stretch five play. What I saw Bobby Portis do in that third quarter, that was abysmal. That was such garbage play, and that's not a let's chalk it up or let's throw it up to where you were in the schedule. That's fundamentals. That's just not being aware. That's not being ready to go for the moment. That's not so much we're tired on the second half of a back-to-back. And that's what makes it a little bit more annoying for me specifically. I thought Budenholzer, it's funny, I thought Budenholzer kept his guys in there too long as if he was trying to make a statement. We're here. We're going to run you out of the building. We're going to win this game, and it's going to be tough on Saturday. You guys keep overlooking us. We are still here in Milwaukee. And it ends up getting cut to 6 late, and it ends up being a closer game because Tolliver gets a steal, which leads to a jam with all your garbage players. I just think it's funny that the Sixers kept battling and fighting to the end with all their bench guys, and it got cut down to 6 when I'm somewhat criticizing the head coach. Come on. Come on. Put your guys on the bench and let's get out of here. Please, stop with this. Go to your bench. We raised the white flag. What type of statement are you trying to make? And I guess he was in the right, considering who knows what would have happened if he pulled him any sooner. Not that I thought the Sixers really had a chance there, but it's just interesting to criticize someone for a decision like that. As if, really, dude, what do you think you're tough? All right, you think you're all fancy there, keeping your starters in, and by the end, maybe he was in the right. I don't know. Who knows? I do know this, though. DeSimone Jewelers is the best place in the universe. That's right. And I seriously want to let you know that if you're looking to go get an engagement ring for your significant other, or you want to buy a Christmas gift upcoming during Christmas time, or for birthdays, or for any holidays coming up, DeSimone Jewelers is the best in the business. They treat you like family, and that's the most important for me when I'm trying to find a spot that I want to constantly go to, because I know, look, my fiance loves jewelry. I am going to constantly get it for her for the rest of my life. When I walk into their place, yo, Brodes, what's going on, man? How are you? What are you thinking about the Sixers? How do you feel about Embiid? It's just family-like atmosphere, and that's what puts a smile on my face. Not only that, it's also the prices. You can't beat them, and because they customize and manufacture every ring they make from start to finish on location, they're able to beat all their competitors' prices. They just treat you like family, not a customer. They don't use sale tactics. They treat you like family, and that is very special. Family-owned business for over 40-plus years of experience. They moved from Jewelers Row, and now they are Haddonfield, New Jersey. I want you to go in there and tell them that Brodes sent you. You'll know exactly what I mean when I tell you family-like atmosphere the second you walk through that door. All the information is down below in the description. You know the deal. It's time to listen to you. It's time to take your calls. The Anytime Hotline.
I don't want to hear anyone say that we don't need Ben Simmons ever again. Yeah, sure, he's frustrating, he's insanely frustrating, but what he brings to the defensive side of the ball is arguably one of the biggest aspects of the team besides Embiid scoring. And I know this is what everyone else is going to bring up, but it's just, we need Ben Simmons back as soon as possible, because we actually do need that 1 seed. And the Nets have it currently right now, and because if we have the 2 seed, guess what team we're most likely going to have to play in the playoffs in the second round? These Bucks. And I'd much rather play a team like the Hawks or the Knicks in the second round compared to a team like the Bucks. So hopefully Ben Simmons comes back soon, because we actually really do need that 1 seed at this moment in time.
Yeah, I do think there is some legitimacy to the importance of the 1 seed. Now that you're up at the top, you're involved, there's only X amount of games to go. So I'm with you. I do think that there is definitely a difference in the matchup in the second round that makes this way more important. You started off the call. It's funny. You started off the call the same way that I heard Sixers Twitter react, a couple of my buddies in the group chat react, and I can't get behind it. That's going too far for me. That's going too far, because then it's making it seem like obviously, I guess that's my point. It's like, it's obvious that this team with Ben Simmons and without Ben Simmons, with no sort of trade-off at all, the team is better with Ben Simmons and his defense. So, yes, you need Ben Simmons out there. With that being said, that's almost acting like his flaws on the team isn't still holding this team back and being such a problem on how teams defend you and hurting this team. You're like, people who say that, it's almost as if that part of him is not factored in. Of course, that's still an issue. I don't want to hear any Ben Simmons slander again. Well, guess what? You're going to hear it, damn it, because it's warranted. It should happen. We should be that hard. We should be that critical. We should keep our foot on the gas when it comes to holding Ben Simmons accountable. It's funny. Everyone hated Brett Brown because he didn't hold anyone accountable. Yet here's Ben Simmons, who isn't doing something we need him to do desperately, and God forbid we hold him accountable, and that's going too far. That's being too mean. That's not realizing his positives. And I'm not saying you specifically. I'm bringing this up more in the natural standard 76ers debate. Not so much the caller, but I hate that. I hate that it's you can't slander Ben because the team isn't really playing strong defensively, and the team is better defensively with Ben than it is without him. Well, come on. No shit, guys. No shit that the defensive player of the year, the argument at least, the guy who's second place right now when it comes to DraftKings Sportsbook, which you can utilize promo code Brodes when you sign up for great odds and promotion boost. He's number 2 in odds to win it. He's the first player outside of Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert's the only one favored. He's the first one when it comes to plus odds. Of course the team's going to be better without it, or with him than without him. Of course. I guess we should have seen this coming, though. And that's where I'm trying to balance it internally. You're so banged up. You're losing a lot of your guys. You're not in your best strengths right now. And now, also add in, you're with this crucial stretch of games. What do we expect to happen? What were we supposed to expect to really occur with all those factors involved? And I think we're seeing the reality more so than the outlier, which would be some insanely positive run during these tough stretch of games with your players not being available because they're injured or this illness or anything else that comes their way. Back-to-backs, unwarranted back-to-backs this late in the season. How are you not prepared for this to be in place? And Doc mentioned this. Maybe the league didn't view the Sixers being in this spot in the standings at the end because it doesn't make sense. You're a schedule maker. All right, what teams are going to be towards the end? Well, what teams are going to have a big game where it comes down to maybe the first seed or comes down to the Eastern Conference? They would never put this team in this spot if they thought that they were going to be number 1, right? I mean, there's no other logic applied here. Unless there's just morons making the schedule, which I guess could be on the table as well.
Well, that was disappointing. Wasn't really in that game from the start. We tried to make a run, but if we play defense like we did, we can't beat anybody like that. And my second thing is on Ben Simmons. They said hopefully he'll be back Saturday, but what's going on? Like, can I get some details? Like, what type of illness is this? I don't know.
I think that's fair. I really do, especially in a year where COVID is in play and everybody knows that you want to be safe and you want to make sure that everyone's taking the right precautions, yet he's hanging out on the bench during one of the games, but he might not travel with the team because nobody wants to be near him. There is clearly a disconnect involved, and I think to some degree we know that there's some personal issues going on, so I'm not here to make any sort of assessment on that because that would be unfair by me considering how serious that's going on in his life. It's the only thing that makes sense, though, right? There's no way he's that sick. This team values the number 1 seed this much. This team really is dedicated to making sure that they make a statement by winning the 1 seed, and an illness is going to hold a player like Ben Simmons back. If he had the flu to that level where he was throwing up and he had 105 fever and he was shaking and shivering and sweating all night long, if that's the level he's at, then fine. I could support that. I want proof. I want pictures. I want to see it actually happen. He wouldn't be on the bench. He would not be on the bench. So there's no way this illness is that severe where what their goal was all year long, this is going to derail Ben Simmons from playing. So it's crazy. And I'm not mad if he's taking time off for that personal reason. I guess... What's he going to say, though? Are the Sixers in a tough spot? Because here I am getting mad about it. But if I'm the Sixers, I'm not going to admit that those accusations are going on. I'm not going to bring light to those accusations. I have Ben Simmons, one of my biggest players, going through personal issues, so I don't want to make attention to it by saying, oh, yeah, Ben's leaving because there's some things going on with his sister and his half-brother. You know what I'm saying? What are the Sixers supposed to do? Saying the illness, is that the responsible professional thing to do instead of coming out and opening up that conversation, opening up that dialogue to something that is really hurting the Simmons family right now? I guess that's fair. Honestly, I guess that's fair. What do I expect them to say other than an illness? I guess we're just looking at it too much from we care about the Sixers basketball games and not so much a human being's life, if that is the case. If that is the case, of course.
Hey, Brodes, Colin from Canada here, Andre from Canada. Tough loss tonight, but there are some positives to take away. Joel's played a back-to-back, shows that he's trying to get in shape. I know it's scary. A guy that's averaging 30 points and 11 rebounds is not in shape yet, but, Joel's working towards there. George Hill is, getting his feet involved and, he's getting involved in the offense and, hopefully now Ben will come back soon. He'll be back on Saturday. So, we could finally set our rotation and see who's playing, who's not playing. For me, the big question is, do we start George Hill or not? Because we seem to be, between George Hill, Shake Milton, and Tyrese Maxey, I don't know if there's going to be enough playing time for all three of those point guards. So.
There's definitely not. There's definitely not going to be. I don't think Tyrese Maxey sees it. Shake maybe entered the conversation again. If he follows this up with 3 or 4 straight games, maybe he works his way back in. But for me specifically, he's still one of the men out. But I guess if he shows that he can give you 20 in 26 minutes, I've seen this one game followed by and kind of sandwiched in between a bunch of garbage and a bunch of slop, and that's what he's been. So I guess it's only fair for me to expect him to be what he's been all year long and not the player we envisioned him being when the season began. I don't know if Ben's going to play, by the way. I don't know if I heard you wrong. Maybe you mentioned that he is going to play on Saturday. The last I saw was 50-50 at best that he ends up playing on Saturday, so we don't know what exactly is going to go down. The Shake Milton thing and George Hill, I think it's pretty clear where they're at. George Hill is the 6th man. I don't know if Dwight Howard's going to be automatic depending on the matchup, but he's going to be the 7th man or just a man off the bench. Not so much the 7th man, but a man off the bench. And that's when it comes down to Matisse Thybulle, because Matisse Thybulle's defensive efforts and his hands and his craft of being explosive defensively and really getting up on you and making you feel uncomfortable and swarmed, that's an element that is very important. Furkan did not play tonight. I did not mention him. He was unavailable due to what happened last game, which I was a little shocked that he even came back into the game last game. I'm a little surprised, though, I'm not going to lie, to go positives on us after a performance like this. I don't think that there's many to look at this with a positive eye. Sure, Joel Embiid played a back-to-back. I think they used him in a way, though, to try and limit what he was able to do. And I think the back-to-back hurt him, but it's, that hurts most players, so I guess that's a little strong to say. And you don't see back-to-backs ever in playoff series, so it's not really telling for what this means when you see the Milwaukee Bucks on a night where you have a day rest and you didn't see them, or a team prior, I should say, a night before. Yeah, it's positive to see Joel run up and down the floor, but they're doing it in a way of limitation, I think, at the same time. So does that devalue the fact that he is doing it? I think that there is value. If you look at the pros, he's just getting conditioned. He's able to maybe get some endurance back. He needs to get the feel of the game back since the bone bruise, and he needs to play through the bone bruise because it's not going anywhere. So all that definitely matters. At the same time, if you're going to be 60% of yourself, 65% of yourself, and it's crazy to say that considering looking at how many points he's had, but he wasn't the version of Joel that we're accustomed to seeing. This was a 65-70% version of Joel Embiid. Yes, you play the back-to-back, but if you're getting the 70% version, does it lose that power and pop of getting Joel Embiid playing fully, if that makes sense? Maybe that's being harsh, though, considering most players are not 100% of themselves on the second half of a back-to-back. But I thought a lot tonight was more of, yes, it played a factor that they were a little sluggish, a little slow, starting off not as fast, which would be slow, which is what I just said. Other side, I think they weren't prepared too, though. Just miscues, simple mistakes that they normally don't make, where they needed to clean it up upstairs as well. All right, before we head out of here, I do need to let you know about my friends over at DraftKings. Masvidal and Usman put on a show the last time they stepped into the octagon. Round 2 is sure to pack a punch. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC, is putting you in the center of this weekend's title fight with 26-1 odds on either title contender to reign victorious. Pick either main event fighter to win during this weekend's UFC title fight, and DraftKings will give you 26-1 odds. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code Brodes when you sign up to turn $5 into $130 if the title contender of your choosing wins. Place your bet and watch the fist fly this weekend. That's code Brodes to turn $5 into $130 if the fighter of your choosing takes home the crown. For a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.